The gathering storm. The Middle East is once again standing at the edge of a dangerous turning point. Tensions that have been building quietly for months are now boiling over into open threats, military preparations, and diplomatic warnings that suggest something far bigger may be coming. At the center of this unfolding crisis lies Iran, facing growing pressure from Israel, the United States, and its regional rivals. Recent intelligence leaks, political signals, and unusual movements among Iran's elite military leadership have fueled explosive claims that senior Iranian commanders may be preparing escape routes to Russia as Israel gears up for a potential strike on Tehran itself. For years, Israel has viewed Iran's military expansion, missile development, and regional proxy network as an existential threat. While most confrontations between the two powers have played out in the shadows, cyber attacks, covert operations, assassinations, and strikes on Iranian-linked targets in Syria, the rules of the game appear to be changing. Israeli leaders are now speaking more openly about the possibility of direct action, and Iranian officials are responding with increasingly aggressive rhetoric. The question is no longer if a major confrontation could happen, but how close the region is to a direct clash. Behind closed doors, intelligence agencies across the world are reportedly tracking unusual developments within Iran's military command structure. These behind-the-scenes moves are raising eyebrows among analysts who see signs of internal fear beneath the surface. Israel's warnings have become sharper in recent weeks. Senior Israeli officials have repeatedly stated that Iran is crossing red lines, particularly in missile technology and military coordination with hostile groups across the region. From Lebanon's Hezbollah to militias in Iraq and Syria, Iran's influence stretches far beyond its borders. Israeli intelligence believes that a direct strike on Iranian soil may be the only way to disrupt what it sees as a rapidly closing window to stop Iran's long-term military ambitions. Russia's role in this crisis cannot be ignored. Since the outbreak of the Ukraine war, Moscow has deepened its partnership with Tehran, relying on Iranian drones and military cooperation. In return, Russia has offered political backing, weapons technology, and diplomatic cover. For Iranian commanders, Russia represents more than an ally. Inside Iran, the political atmosphere is tense. Economic sanctions have already weakened the country's economy, fueling public frustration and unrest. Inflation, unemployment, and currency collapse have eroded confidence in the government. A direct military confrontation with Israel would place enormous strain on an already fragile system. They argue that delaying action only allows Iran to strengthen its defenses and expand its influence. At the same time, Israel understands the enormous risks involved. A strike on Tehran would invite retaliation on Israeli cities, overwhelm missile defense systems, and potentially draw in major powers. This is why Israeli strategy has historically favored precision and surprise. But recent signals suggest patience may be running out. The United States watches closely from the sidelines, publicly urging restraint, while privately preparing for contingencies. Washington has repeatedly stated it does not want a wider war, yet it continues to reinforce its military presence in the region. American warships, air defense systems, and intelligence assets are positioned to respond quickly if tensions explode. This dual approach, diplomacy paired with deterrence, reflects the fear that one miscalculation could ignite a conflict far beyond the control of any single actor. as rumors of commanders fleeing to Russia circulate, Iranian officials dismiss them as psychological warfare designed to sow fear and division. They accuse Israel and its allies of spreading disinformation to undermine morale. While it is impossible to independently verify many of these claims, the persistence of such reports points to a deeper reality. Confidence in absolute security is eroding. Even the most powerful military leaders understand that modern warfare can be swift, devastating, and unpredictable. What makes this moment especially dangerous is the lack of clear communication between adversaries. Back-channel diplomacy, which once helped prevent escalation, appears weaker than before. Public statements are increasingly confrontational, leaving little room for compromise without political loss of face. In such an environment, leaders may feel trapped by their own rhetoric, pushed toward action simply to maintain credibility. As the world watches, the question remains unanswered. Is this all part of a pressure campaign designed to force concessions, or are we witnessing the early stages of a genuine military showdown? The movements of Iranian commanders, the warnings from Israel, and the strategic calculations of Russia and the United States suggest that the margin for error is shrinking rapidly. This is not just another Middle Eastern standoff. It is a test of red lines, alliances, and the balance of power in a region that has seen too many wars already. Whether diplomacy can still pull the region back from the brink remains uncertain. But one thing is clear. The next moves made by Tehran and Tel Aviv could reshape the Middle East for years to come. Inside the war calculations, as tensions intensify, the real battle is unfolding far from the public eye. Inside war rooms, intelligence briefings, and closed-door meetings where Iran, Israel, and their allies are calculating risks that could redefine the region. Public statements may sound confident and defiant, but behind the scenes, decision-makers are grappling with one central fear. Once the first strike happens, there may be no way to control what comes next. For Iran's leadership, the possibility of a direct Israeli strike on Tehran represents a nightmare scenario. Unlike limited attacks on proxy forces in Syria or Iraq, a strike on the Iranian capital would strike at the heart of the regime's authority. Military headquarters, intelligence centers, and symbolic government sites are all believed to be on Israel's target lists. Iranian planners understand that even a short surgical operation could deal a psychological blow far greater than the physical damage itself. This is why reports of senior commanders preparing fallback plans have gained traction. In authoritarian systems, survival planning among elites is not unusual during moments of crisis. The idea of fleeing does not necessarily mean abandoning the state. Instead, it reflects contingency thinking. Russia, with its deep intelligence ties and political alignment with Tehran, offers a secure environment from which Iranian leaders could continue coordinating strategy if domestic command structures were disrupted. Israel, however, sees delay as dangerous. Every month that passes narrows its military options. Within Israel's security establishment, there's intense debate. Some argue that a decisive strike now could weaken Iran's command and control, forcing Tehran into defensive chaos. Others warn that even a successful operation could backfire. This strategy places enormous importance on leadership continuity. If Iran's command structure were severely damaged in an initial Israeli strike, coordinating such a regional response could become difficult. That is why safeguarding senior commanders matters so much. Whether through hardened bunkers, dispersed command centers, or relocation abroad, Iran appears determined to ensure it can fight back even under extreme conditions. Russia's involvement adds another layer of complexity. Moscow has its own interests at stake. A regional war could disrupt energy markets, weaken Western influence, and distract global attention from Eastern Europe. Outcomes that could benefit Russia strategically. At the same time, the United States has long pledged to support Israel's security, yet it is wary of being pulled into another Middle Eastern war. American officials are reportedly urging restraint while quietly reinforcing regional defenses. Missile defense systems, naval deployments, and intelligence sharing are all designed to prepare for the worst without openly endorsing an Israeli strike. Inside Iran, public messaging remains aggressively confident. State television shows generals inspecting troops and declaring readiness for any attack. These images are meant to project strength, discourage dissent, and signal deterrence to enemies. However, history shows that regimes under pressure often project unity, even as internal debates rage. Iranian leaders know that such disruption could quickly spill into unrest, especially if people believe the government failed to protect them. This is why Israeli planners are believed to favor precision strikes aimed at command nodes rather than broad bombardment. Yet precision in a dense urban environment is never guaranteed, and mistakes could escalate tensions beyond repair. The psychological dimension of this standoff cannot be underestimated. Fear, rumor, and uncertainty are powerful weapons. Reports of commanders fleeing, whether fully accurate or exaggerated, serve to undermine confidence in Iran's leadership. At the same time, Israeli society is bracing for potential retaliation, with emergency drills and public warnings becoming more frequent. Both sides are preparing their populations for hardship, a sign that leaders believe conflict is no longer unthinkable. Diplomatic channels remain active but strained. Regional powers are attempting to de-escalate quietly, aware that a war between Iran and Israel would destabilize the entire Middle East. However, diplomacy struggles when red lines are perceived as being crossed. Each side fears that backing down would signal weakness and invite future aggression. As military preparations continue, time itself becomes a weapon. Delays allow defenses to strengthen, alliances to shift, and public narratives to harden. Every day without resolution increases the chance that a single incident, a misinterpreted radar signal, the question that now dominates every intelligence briefing is chillingly simple. When the moment comes, will restraint prevail, or will fear and pride push these rivals into a war neither truly wants, but all are preparing for? The region on the brink. As the standoff between Iran and Israel deepens, the consequences are no longer confined to the two rivals alone. The entire Middle East is being pulled into a widening circle of tension, where every actor, large or small, is preparing for fallout. What makes this moment uniquely dangerous is that regional players are not merely observers. They are potential participants, each with their own red lines, fears, and ambitions. Lebanon sits at the center of these anxieties. Israeli strategists know that any strike on Tehran could trigger retaliation from Lebanon, transforming a distant confrontation into an immediate existential challenge. For Hezbollah, the decision to act would not be simple. A full-scale war with Israel would devastate Lebanon, a country already struggling with economic collapse and political paralysis. Yet, Hezbollah EQS legitimacy within Iran, AES regional strategy, depends on its willingness to respond when Iran is directly threatened. This dilemma places Hezbollah EQS leadership in an impossible position. Restraint risks weakening the alliance with Tehran, while action risks destroying what remains of Lebanon's stability. Syria presents another volatile front. Years of conflict have left the country fragmented and fragile, but it remains a key transit route for Iranian influence. Israeli strikes in Syria have become routine, targeting Iranian-linked infrastructure with little international backlash. However, if Israel escalates against Tehran, Syria could transform from a shadow battlefield into an active launchpad for retaliation. This would further complicate an already chaotic conflict zone. In Iraq, Iran-aligned militias closely watch developments. These groups have repeatedly demonstrated their ability to target regional interests when tensions rise. A major Israeli attack on Iran could prompt coordinated actions designed to pressure OD's allies and disrupt regional stability. Iraq's government, caught between internal divisions and external pressure, would struggle to prevent its territory from becoming a battleground once again. The Persian Gulf is equally vulnerable. Iran has long signaled its ability to disrupt shipping routes if pushed into a corner. Even limited interference could send shockwaves through global energy markets, driving prices upward and triggering economic consequences far beyond the Middle East. For global powers, this is one of the most alarming aspects of the crisis, a reminder that regional wars do not stay regional for long. Inside Iran, the psychological impact of looming conflict is growing. While official media maintains a narrative of strength and unity, ordinary citizens face a different reality. Years of sanctions have eroded living standards. The prospect of war adds another layer of uncertainty. Rumors spread quickly in such environments, and reports of elite commanders securing escape routes only deepen public anxiety. Israel, meanwhile, faces its own domestic calculations. Israeli society is accustomed to security threats, but a multi-front conflict would test even its resilience. Missile alerts, economic disruption, and prolonged mobilization could strain public morale. Israeli leaders must weigh not only military success, but also the long-term social and political cost of escalation. International diplomacy is racing against the clock. Regional powers are quietly urging restraint, aware that a war between Iran and Israel would destabilize alliances and redraw security dynamics. Yet diplomacy struggles to gain traction when trust is absent. Years of hostility, broken agreements, and mutual suspicion have hollowed out confidence on all sides. Russia and China monitor developments carefully. Both see opportunities and risks. A distracted West could benefit their strategic interests, but uncontrolled conflict threatens global economic stability. For Russia, its relationship with Iran is valuable, yet it has no interest in seeing the Middle East descend into chaos that could undermine energy markets or provoke wider intervention. The United States remains the key external actor. While Washington publicly emphasizes de-escalation, its military posture suggests preparation for worst-case scenarios. This dual approach reflects a painful reality. The United States may not want war, but it cannot ignore the possibility. Any attack on Israel or a major disruption to global trade routes would demand a response. What makes this moment particularly dangerous is the erosion of clear red lines. In past crises, unspoken rules often prevented escalation. Today, those rules appear weaker. Cyber attacks blur attribution, proxy warfare muddies responsibility, and political rhetoric hardens positions. In such an environment, miscalculation becomes more likely. Even a limited incident could spiral. A single strike interpreted as too aggressive, a retaliation that goes further than expected, or a domestic political decision made under pressure could trigger a chain reaction. Leaders may believe they can control escalation, but history repeatedly shows how quickly control is lost once violence begins. As part 3 of this story unfolds, the region appears suspended in a tense pause. Forces are positioned, alliances are tested, and narratives are sharpened. Everyone is waiting for a signal, a diplomatic breakthrough, a strategic retreat, or a decisive strike. Until that moment arrives, uncertainty reigns. The Middle East has seen many crises, but few with such wide-reaching implications. Every major actor involved understands that the next decision could either prevent catastrophe or unleash a chain reaction that reshapes the region for generations. The rumors, military preparations, and diplomatic maneuvering all point to a single conclusion. The era of indirect confrontation between Iran and Israel may be nearing its end. For Iran's leadership, the pressure is immense. Maintaining an image of strength is essential to the regime's survival, yet the cost of miscalculation has never been higher. A direct Israeli strike on Tehran would challenge the very foundation of Iran's security doctrine. Even if Iran were able to respond forcefully through its regional allies, the symbolic damage of being attacked at the heart of its power would be profound. This is where the reports of commanders preparing escape options take on deeper meaning. Such actions are not necessarily signs of imminent collapse, but they do reveal a leadership that understands the fragility of the moment. When elites plan for worst-case scenarios, it often signals that confidence in total control has weakened. Survival planning becomes a hedge against uncertainty, not just from foreign enemies, but from domestic consequences as well. Israel, on the other hand, faces its own version of the same dilemma. Acting now may disrupt Iran's military command and signal deterrence, but it risks igniting a regional war that could overwhelm even Israel's advanced defenses. Waiting, however, may allow Iran to further entrench itself. Political leaders weigh international reaction, alliance dynamics, and public tolerance for prolonged conflict. No decision is taken lightly, because once the first missile is launched, the narrative will no longer be controlled by speeches or diplomacy. The role of the United States remains pivotal. Washington's influence could still help slow the momentum toward war, but its leverage is not unlimited. American officials must balance support for Israel with the reality that a full-scale conflict would demand U.S. involvement, whether planned or not. This creates pressure on Washington to manage outcomes it may not fully control. Russia's position adds further uncertainty. As a strategic partner of Iran, Moscow offers diplomatic protection and potential refuge for Iranian elites. At the same time, Russia has little interest in a chaotic Middle East that destabilizes energy markets or invites deeper Western intervention. This contradiction limits how far Moscow is willing to go, even as it benefits from global distraction. China, too, watches carefully. Stability is critical for its economic interests. Yet, prolonged conflict could weaken Western influence in the region. Like Russia, Beijing prefers tension without explosion, a balance that becomes harder to maintain as events accelerate. The greatest risk may lie not in deliberate decisions, but in unintended consequences. History is filled with wars that began not by design, but by misinterpretation, miscommunication, or overconfidence. A proxy attack blamed on the wrong actor, a defensive move mistaken for aggression, or a political leader pushed into action by domestic pressure could trigger escalation before anyone fully realizes what is happening. For civilians across the region, these calculations are distant yet deeply personal. Ordinary people will bear the cost of decisions made far above them. Economic disruption, displacement, fear, and uncertainty follow every major conflict. In Iran, where public frustration already simmers beneath the surface, war could deepen internal divisions. In Israel, constant alertness could strain social cohesion. Across neighboring states, instability would ripple outward. This moment also raises broader questions about power and deterrence in the modern world. Can traditional military strength still guarantee security in an age of asymmetric warfare, cyber operations, and globalized consequences? Or are nations trapped in cycles of escalation that technology has made faster and more dangerous than ever before? As the world watches, the silence between actions grows louder. Military assets are positioned, intelligence services are alert, and diplomats race against time. Yet uncertainty dominates. No official announcement confirms what comes next, and that ambiguity itself is a weapon, one that fuels speculation, fear, and preparation on all sides. Whether Iranian commanders truly flee to Russia or not may ultimately matter less than what the rumor represents. A shared understanding among elites that the coming days could redefine everything. Power structures, alliances, and regional influence all hang in the balance. If diplomacy prevails, this crisis may be remembered as a near miss, a moment when restraint narrowly overcame escalation. But if force is chosen, history will mark it as the beginning of a far more dangerous chapter in Middle Eastern politics, one whose consequences will be felt far beyond the region. The world stands on the edge, waiting to see which path is chosen. If you found this breakdown insightful and want more deep analysis on global conflicts, power struggles, and hidden history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps the channel grow and keeps you ahead of the story.